On.
All right. Welcome to Warriors Quest tonight, everybody. I'm really excited for tonight's show because we've got a couple of really unique guests. I want to introduce a warrior, a kidney warrior who's gone through a kidney transplant. He's a recipient. I want to be able to have him share his story and hear kind of his journey of what's happened through his life. And I'd like to introduce Ken Sorenson. I'm excited to hear his story. So everybody, please give a Warriors call to Ken Sorenson, everybody.
Thank you very much for having me.
Oh, you're welcome, man. I'm excited. Now, Ken, I've heard a little bit of your story, and Steve has shared with me a little bit, and I've heard your story online. But tell me a little bit about yourself so that some of our followers can hear it as well. Tell us where you're from, how it all started, kind of like a superhero. Tell us your origin story.
Yeah, fair enough. I grew up and I currently live outside of Charleston, South Carolina. I'm kind of biased, but I think it's one of the most beautiful places in the country.
All right.
and I moved here from the Chicago area when I was 5. So so I've been here pretty much my whole life. I was diagnosed with diabetes, I think, when I was 19. And when you're 19, you really don't think anything in the world's going to affect you, and you think all these things that doctors are telling you are never going to happen to you.
Right.
Well, and to be honest, they didn't really tell me that this stuff would happen to me. But then again, they didn't think it would get this bad. So I didn't do a great job of taking care of myself, and I was college age when I was diagnosed, and so how college students can be, that kind of thing. And so I just dealt with that for a while, and then starting about probably 10 years ago, I started having problems with my vision. And to give you an example, like right now, I can't see out of my right eye.
Okay. All right.
And that was because of diabetes. So clearly
Gotcha.
my body was affected a great deal by diabetes. Some people can go a long time without having effects. I'm not one of those people. To give you an idea, that I just turned 40 2 weeks ago. So I was probably about 30 when I lost vision in my right eye.
Gotcha. All right.
And probably about 6 years ago, my general doctor suggested I go see a nephrologist about my kidneys, because he was worried my creatinine level had gone up a little bit. It wasn't crazy high, but he thought, and I was very blessed that the guy he sent me to is a good friend of mine now. He's an amazing doctor. I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for him. And so we started trying to do things to help my kidneys 6 years ago. It wasn't going particularly well. So about 4 years ago, I started dialysis. I started on peritoneal dialysis. But in addition to my eyesight with my diabetes, I also have gastroparesis. And so they thought I was getting sick constantly, and they thought that PD might be making it worse. It turned out that it didn't, but it was a good idea, because
Sure.
that has to do, so they switched me to hemo.
All right.
So I was on hemodialysis for about 3 years. And I started out with a catheter, and they couldn't get a fistula graft in me. So I had a catheter for almost 2 years.
Uh-huh.
And then they took me off of dialysis for a few months because they thought that was making my stomach worse. And so,
Wow.
yeah, no, it's a random, like my hospital that I got the transplant said, I don't know if I've ever heard of anyone going off of dialysis once they started. But I went off for probably 4 or 5 months, and then
Uh-huh.
it got to the point where my kidney doctor was like, "Hey, your creatinine's 13.5." He's like, I know you're technically feeling better, but he's like, it's just getting to the point where I don't want to risk it anymore. So I went back on, but during the time I was off, they got a fistula in me that worked. And so when I went back on, I started right away with a fistula. But back in I started a Facebook page probably the summer of last year, when I
Mm-hmm.
was starting to feel a little bit better, because with the stomach thing, I was in the hospital constantly, so I wasn't really
I can
actively
only
searching for
imagine.
donors. Um,
Right.
and so in the summer, I created a Facebook page, and I started trying to get people to go get tested. That did not go well. You have, when you say you have kidney disease, you have maybe hundreds of people that say they're going to get tested. very few actually do it. I know my mother was going to get tested. She retired in January, and so she was going to get tested as soon as she retired, because she's in relatively good health, that kind of thing. I think it was January 24th. I got a call from my hospital. Actually, how it first started was I got a call from my cardiologist, and he said, "Hey, you need to come in and get a stress test right away." I'm like, "Well, I have a catheterization test like in a couple weeks. Why do I need to get a stress test right now? Isn't a catheterization test better than a stress test?" And he
Mm-hmm.
and their office was like, "I don't know why, but MUSC just called. That's the hospital I got my transplant on, the Medical University of South Carolina. They said
Gotcha.
they said you needed to get in right away." And so
Uh-huh.
I was like, "Well, okay, that's fine. Just let me know when you can." So we scheduled an appointment. And then they called the hospital back and said, "Hey, he's got a catheterization test. Why does he need, and the hospital was like, "Oh, no, that's better. That's fine. Don't worry about it." And then I didn't hear anything from the hospital. And so I asked the cardiologist, I'm like, "What do you think this is?" And she said, "I can't tell you for sure. So please don't take this as, word." But she said, "Usually it means you have a transplant coming." And I'm like, "That's weird, because it would have to be a deceased donor, because I don't have anyone that's been tested for a, you
Nobody
know,
lined up at that
yeah."
point.
And I was like, and they wouldn't be calling ahead for a deceased donor,
Yeah.
and so I was like, okay. Then that was like at 9 o'clock in the morning. Then about 6 o'clock that night, I get a call from the hospital, and she's like, "I have a feeling you are wondering why we've been, making calls about you." And I was like, "Well, yeah, I kind of would." And she's like, I've got a living donor for you." And I said, "Well, I
Wow.
don't, I don't know anyone that's been tested." And she said,
Uh-huh.
"It's a complete stranger." She
Are
said,
you kidding me?
yeah, she wanted to donate to someone else, and that person got too sick to get the transplant, unfortunately. And they've been waiting about a year for that person to get
Uh-huh.
better, and the person's just not getting better. And so they called her and said, "Hey, we have to take her off the list. We've had her inactive for a while,
Yeah.
And she's like, "I still want to donate. Can you find a donor?" And it was me. And so the lady's like, "Are you free on February 13th to get a transplant?" I'm like, "You could pick any day, anytime, like whatever, that kind of thing." And so I
Well,
went
let
in the
me check
hospital.
my calendar.
Yeah, yeah. I was like, just whatever. And she started laughing,
Right.
and she stressed to me. She's like, "Keep in mind, this is like winning the lottery. It's hard enough to get living donors, let
Sure
alone a
it is.
complete stranger living donor."
Right.
And so I went in to get my pre-testing and stuff, and everything went well. Even though I was sick, I'm relatively young, and so the process, for me, compared to maybe other people, was probably a little bit easier, because I was at the age I am. And I had controlled my diabetes for a while at that point. I had, I tried to exercise a little bit. I couldn't do much, but I
Mm-hmm.
tried to do what I could do, that kind of thing. And so I went in
Mm-hmm.
for the testing, and I had to sign a paper saying I wanted to meet my donor, but I couldn't meet her until after the transplant. And so I signed that paper, and so on February 13th, I went in for the surgery. I guess the surgery took, I think it took right at 3 hours, maybe even a little less. The surgeon, I was lucky and had the guy that wasn't just, he was the chief of surgery at the hospital. He used to be the chief of transplants, but
Uh-huh.
and so he liked doing transplants every once in a while just to keep him sharp and stuff like that. And so he did my surgery, and everything went perfectly. I met my donor at 7 a.m. the next morning, because she was walking around, and she was like, "Hey, does he want to meet you?" And if you've ever had a transplant, you know that they wake you up every hour to get blood pressure and things like that. So I met her the next day. We're pretty good friends. We probably text, you know, I don't know, 5 or 6 days out of the week. She's an amazing
Wow.
woman. She's a little bit younger than me, but she was in
Uh-huh.
great health. She's had more setbacks than I have after it, because she's been in the hospital a couple times. Nothing serious, but just nagging things that the transplant team wanted to make sure we're fine and stuff. And now she's been back to work for probably a month. She's doing very well. But I was in the hospital for 4 days. I've been out ever since. I feel better than I have in 10 years. I'm you know
Wow.
planning what I'm going to do with the rest of my life now that
Yeah.
it's like I had a new birth at around 40, and I've got all kinds of stuff that I want to do. And the biggest thing I want to do is, in some way, shape, or form, advocate for people needing transplants, particularly kidney transplants, and people with kidney disease. It's just not something that's talked about. There's a lot of diseases that
Amen.
affect people less than kidney disease
Mhm.
that get more press and more information out there. And so
I totally agree.
I want to be part of the solution.
Very nice. Very nice. Wow. So a complete altruistic donor, complete stranger.
Every time
Uh,
you lose faith in people, you find out a story like this, and you're like, you know what? There are really amazing
wow.
people out there.
That,
She gained nothing from it other than helping me, and I call her a hero and stuff. And she's like, I'm not a hero. She's like, there was something I could do to help somebody. She's like,
yeah.
I would like to think that almost anyone would want to do that. And I had explained to her that people, even when people die, they don't like donating organs. I
Right.
was like, you're doing it while you're living, that kind of thing. So she's an amazing person.
That is amazing. Wow. That does, that does bring more confidence and humanity. I mean,
Yeah, without question. You're completely
yeah,
right.
that is absolutely a feel good story.
Yeah.
Wow. Thanks for sharing that. That is
Oh,
incredible.
oh, my
So,
pleasure.
so what, I mean, when, explain to me, how you felt, when you found out about this complete stranger, and what kind of elation, what kind of joy did you have?
Well, there was obviously a lot of joy, but it started out as a lot of shock.
All right, sure.
Because I had been a backup for a kidney 8 times.
Uh-huh.
I had been on the list. I had only officially been on the list for a year. This February was my year, so the month I got my transplant. Obviously it dates back to when you start dialysis,
Yes.
but the actual time I was on the list was a year, and I was literally a
Hmm.
backup 8 times. And so I've gotten calls before where they're like, "Don't eat," and then 16 hours later, you still don't hear from them, and you finally call them and say, "Hey, you guys were supposed to call me back. What's going on?" That kind of
Hmm.
thing. I got the calls at 3 o'clock in the morning, those kind of things. And so, and I had actually been a backup a week before I got the call. And so I was like, hey, they're probably, and when you're going through the transplant process, there's all kinds of stuff. They're like, hey, you haven't gotten tested for this in a while. You need to do this, that kind of thing. And
Yeah.
so, I thought it might be one of those calls,
So
like,
you
hey,
thought, okay, I've gone through this roller coaster ride.
mhm.
They've given me hope, then they've yanked it. Great. This sounds really, glittery and glamorous, but hey, I've gone through something similar. Let me see if it really is the real deal, is what you're kind of thinking.
Yeah, and then the thing set in, the reality sets in. You're like, okay, I have like 3 weeks where I can't get sick in the heart of flu season. I can't get sick, so I'm like, I'm not going out unless I have to. I went to dialysis, and then one time I went to church because there was a healing mass at my mom's church, and she wanted me to go. But I didn't leave the house. I wore masks everywhere. I just and you're also worried that something could happen to the donor.
Yeah.
Because you've been on the roller coaster ride. You know how easy it is for them to be like, "Hey, we have to postpone it. Hey, we have to postpone it again." That kind of thing. So
All right.
so you're
Very
exactly right.
nice. Well, speaking of church, again, I want to say thank you for sharing that story. It's absolutely a very unique story. I don't know that you hear about that happening all the time. And it's exactly what I want other kidney warriors to hear so that we can give them hope.
Yeah,
Um,
don't lose hope. Don't every Just
exactly.
when you don't think it's gonna happen, just when you think it can't happen, it can
Man,
happen.
absolutely. So speaking of church, because you mentioned church, and I apologize for cutting you off, but it's this perfect segue. I have a kidney warrior that I'd like to introduce, and I'd love to have you stay on if you
Yeah,
want to. I'd love it
yeah,
so that
certainly.
you can be a co-host and ask questions if you'd like to. This kidney warrior I'd like to introduce. She has a great correlation with church. And so I'd like to bring on Andrea Poplin. That's the kidney warrior I'd like to introduce. And I'd love to have Andrea come on now so that we can hear her story. How are you doing, Andrea?
Good, good.
Good. Hey, it's great to have you on the Warriors Quest live broadcast. This show is exactly for kidney warriors like Ken Sorenson and like yourself. So it's awesome to have you on the show.
Glad to be here.
Okay, great. Well, I was telling him it was a perfect segue, plug in to talk about church, because I think there's a great correlation with church in regards to what keeps you grounded in your life. Is that kind of right?
Yes, my husband is a pastor, so church is a big ordeal in our family.
Well, very
Yes.
nice. Well, I'd like to hear a little bit more. You and I've talked just a little bit, and we've got a little bit in common because you're from Coos Bay originally, Coos Bay, Oregon.
Correct.
All right, yeah, and I told you that my grandparents are from Coquille, Oregon, which is it's on the coast. It's a little
Yes.
small town, not real big, but I know Oregon a little bit, and I've driven out there many times. But but now you and your husband live in Stillwell, is that right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, tell us a little bit about yourself. Give us a little background about how you found out how you got kidney disease, and give us a little background about what your life is now and how it's kind of turned your life into a different sort of direction or journey.
Yeah. Well, I was in my young 20s when I was diagnosed with diabetes. We just started out doing like dieting and trying to figure out other ways before medicines and insulin and all that.
All right. Uh-huh.
And then later on, in 2014, I had a routinely yearly checkup with my creatinine levels were out skyrocketed. And from then on, I saw a nephrologist and found out I was at stage 3 kidney disease, which now I'm at stage 5. That's about it.
Okay. So, and Ken knows this story a little bit because he has diabetes, and and high blood pressure, diabetes, those are common sort of symptoms. When you were first diagnosed and you were stage 3, you were trying to do some things, to kind of keep your levels, so that they're not going in a direction where you had to go on dialysis. But give me an idea of, how it kind of changed your life. What were your feelings, and, how did it have an impact for you?
Well, kind of first I was scared, didn't really understand the whole kidney disease and what all it means. And nobody in my family had ever had kidney disease. My mom had gestational diabetes when she was pregnant, but that was the only diabetes even in our family.
Okay.
So it was all new to me.
So it's very scary, and it is. It's, especially when it's something that's altering your life. I can only imagine what you may have felt, because sometimes, the doctors, they try to convey it in a way that maybe, this is what's going on, and they try to be straight with you. But sometimes, there's what they talk about, and then there's reality that kind of, in the back of your mind, it doesn't really sink in until a little bit later. And then you start to really think about it, and then it kind of probably makes you feel differently. Is that how it happened with you as well?
Oh, yes. And you're like, what's dialysis? What does that consist of?
Well, and it doesn't matter what a doctor says. They can't prepare you for what dialysis is. You could read about it. You could do, it's like a lot of things, until you're actually sitting in that chair and having needles put in your arm, or whether you're using the catheter, and you're sitting there for, I don't know, when I did it, it was 4 hours of treatment, 3 days a week. They just can't prepare you for it. And my doctor did a great job of trying, and he tried his best to keep me off of it as long as he could. But, he just couldn't prepare me,
Yeah, I do the peritoneal dialysis for 8 hours every night.
Okay.
Yeah, I started with that, and they had me doing it 11 hours a night. And I was like, man, I'll have to just lay in bed after I wake up, waiting for it to end,
Wow. Yeah, Ken, I've got a neighbor that his wife donated to him, so he's not on dialysis now, but he was doing like up into 12 hours, on peritoneal.
Yeah. I couldn't imagine that. I mean, 11 hours was bad enough, that kind of thing.
8 is bad enough.
Yeah, no, you're right. Actually, 1 hour is bad enough.
Yeah.
Right.
Invariably, no matter what machine, whether it's hemo or peritoneal, after the first few minutes, you're like, hey, I'm done with this. Like, can we move on? That kind of thing.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, and well said. I mean, even 1 hour, well said. So Andrea, what, because it is something that, especially when it's happening, isn't enjoyable. It's not fun. It's not entertaining. And those that are going through this, those are the ones that can have greater understanding, like Ken here as a co-host.
Right.
What are some things that you can talk about that keep you up? Because again, this is not an easy thing to go through, and there are things that some of us do to keep ourselves up. How do you do it?
Well, definitely my friends and family, church group, my kiddos. I do have 7 kiddos, ages 4 to 22.
Awesome.
So they keep me busy.
All right, great. Very nice. So you've got 7 kids.
Yes.
And then your husband is a pastor.
Correct.
Okay. That's
busy.
Yeah.
That is great.
I bet you're
is
very
awesome.
busy.
Yeah, that alone keeps your family busy, I bet.
Well, and with the kidney disease, obviously fatigue is one of the major things that you deal with. Not feeling well in general. Like how challenging has it been to you being a mother of 7 in order to like remotely keep up with them?
Oh, it's pretty hard. Pretty hard. And I also have the gastroparesis as well.
Oh,
so
yeah.
that has
Wow. Those
I was lucky. About a year and a half ago, I got a gastric pacemaker installed, which I didn't know, and there was only one doctor in my state that did it, and he's actually retired now. But
wow.
It took about a year.
Yeah. I've never even heard about that, Ken.
Yeah, I had no idea. And luckily, the hospital that I got my transplant from, they're also one of the better gastro hospitals in the country. And so they suggested it, and I went. And it took about a year for them to adjust the settings enough and things like that. And I had a pretty severe case. Like in 2017, 3/4 of the year, it was in the hospital because I couldn't keep anything down. They actually put a feeding tube in me, and I threw up the feeding tube. Which they had never seen before. But this gastric pacemaker has worked, and I've changed my diet and things like that to try to help that kind of thing. But it's a horrible disease. I actually think I struggled with that more than I did kidney disease, even because and maybe it's just the fact that I had both of them at the same time.
Andrea, she's nodding. So you feel that way too sometimes?
Yeah, like even though I don't get sick as much anymore, but the first hour I'm up, like I have to take my transplant medicine at 8 a.m. So no matter what, I wake up at least an hour beforehand because I know I need that hour just so my stomach will stabilize enough for me not to get sick when I take the medicine. And actually, that's one of the things that kept me off the transplant list for a while because they're like, we can't put you on if you're throwing up 8 times a day,
right.
Wow.
So that kept me off the transplant list for a while. So I definitely feel your pain with seems like we have very similar situations with
you guys have a lot in common.
Gastroparesis and the kidney disease. So definitely.
Yeah.
But I'm glad you're plugged into a church, just because I know not everyone is necessarily religious, but I'll tell you this, the people around you are what keeps you going, and people having faith in you. Like the church I grew up in, and that is literally right across from my neighborhood, donated money towards my kidney transplant. Like they just been great, and they supported, like, not only me, but my mother obviously is, my caregiver. And so she helped me through this last, few years. So, being plugged into something, and also it shows you have faith. And that's one of the biggest things you need through this process is faith. And you've got to have faith that, what's supposed to happen is going to happen.
Yep.
So Andrea, with your children, have they been tested? What kind of, what kind of direction have your kids gone to try to help you?
Well, my most of them are too young still to be tested, but the 21 and older, my actual 21-year-old has kidney issues herself. So therefore,
Really?
yes.
Oh man, gosh.
Yeah, so
Is it also because of diabetes or?
well, she was actually adopted. So we don't know a
Okay.
whole lot of her birth
Hmm.
background.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. Well, it's too bad that she also has some maybe she has some the same disease, but it's wonderful that you can at least be there and be a motivation for her, so that if she continues down that path, that
Right.
you can have a greater understanding and help her through some tough times.
Right.
Sometimes it's not good that bad things happen to good people,
Right.
but sometimes, because God has given you this to go through, if she ends up going through it and it keeps on going down that path, then you can be there for her and be a support, and that sometimes is invaluable.
Right.
Well, I definitely feel that, I was given this disease to try to help make a difference in other people that had struggled with its lives, because, I mean, we all have a story to tell, and it could
Absolutely.
touch that one person that needed it that day,
God only
that kind of thing.
knows.
So yeah, you're exactly right.
Mhm.
Now, and I know, Andrea, when I was just reading up a little bit to kind of get familiar or kind of get to know you a little bit, I noticed on your Facebook profile you've got a scripture on there from Psalm. Does that scripture on your Facebook profile, does that mean something to you, or is that just something you've read recently?
I believe that's the one about well, I put that on there for my adoptions of all my children.
All right.
Yeah, that's what that means to me.
Very nice. Very nice. That's awesome. That says a lot about someone's character, when they choose to adopt somebody, because that's absolutely that's true love. Wow.
All 7 of ours are adopted.
That's awesome.
That
Wow.
that's
Yeah.
amazing. That's
That
amazing.
is that is amazing. You and your husband are really good souls. That
Yeah.
is awesome. I mean, I don't know you very well, but I can tell just by having you share that with me that all 7 are adopted. That's a very, very good thing, and not very many people would do that. And those kids that are adopted, you know, to, I mean, wow, I can only imagine how they may be feeling. How did that start? Did you first do foster care, or did you decide that, did you just go in and get your feet wet all of a sudden just to adopt?
Well, when I was in high school, I had a best friend that was a foster child, and ever since then, I said that I wanted to be a foster parent. Just saw neat things and saw her foster parents help her.
Yeah.
And then me and my husband were both on board after we'd been married about 5 years and had no kids of our
All right.
own. So then we were like, yeah, let's just start fostering. And then after you
Okay.
foster, you just get so attached you can't say no.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Well, that's I come from a pretty large family myself. I've got 3 brothers and 4 sisters, and I'm an identical twin. You may see my twin brother. He and I do videos together, and we advocate for kidney warriors. His name's Jeffrey Brown. But so we were the last.
Hmm. I think his screen is locked. At least he has one for me. I don't know about you.
Yeah, looks like it froze up.
Well, I guess I'll talk to you a little bit while we're waiting on him to return. So
Okay.
one of the questions I have for you is what, because I don't know anything about you as opposed to them. They know a little bit about you. But and first of all, your name's Andrea, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, Andrea. Well, Andrea, what kind of things are you doing to kind of put the word out that you need a kidney?
Well, I've actually been even put on the news.
Oh, that's awesome.
My church
Really?
group, my church group got a hold of the news people, and they came and did an interview. I have put some on, some info on Facebook and stuff, and TikTok.
In TikTok as well. Very nice.
Yeah, on TikTok. Yep. Just
all
social
right.
media pretty much, and of course word of mouth.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Definitely.
Do you know?
Very nice. Now, it's important to kind of get the word out there, and it's important to get your name where other people may not see it regularly. So TikTok is something that a lot of the younger generation, they're using it. So why not? And if you can use Snapchat, and whatever you can use to get your name out there, that's important. I applaud, anything to be creative. Yeah. Way to go.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. That's all. Do you know if anyone's been tested yet?
I wanted to talk a little bit about your family, your faith. With having your husband be a pastor, how does your faith keep everybody together as a family, and how does that keep you tight knit?
Oh, it's definitely strong. Without faith, I wouldn't be here. Yeah, we definitely are close knit family. Yeah.
That's great. You see that, we have that in common. I have a strong amount of faith myself. I believe that that's what's kept me, strong on down days or times where perhaps, things aren't going very well. I can only imagine when things aren't going well for you that perhaps, that's been something like a beacon, a bright light for you.
Right.
What does your husband, is he going to, with his duties, is he, what nights is he available? And then you're at dialysis. How do your schedules kind of mesh?
He's pretty much with me 24 hours, 7 days a week.
All right.
Of course, I'm doing this now in his study at church while he's doing church.
Oh, right on. Very nice.
Right.
Way to multitask.
And he is my caregiver. He does do a lot for me.
Well, God bless him.
Yes, he hooks me up every night and make sure I get my medicines and
Yeah, I think sometimes.
So with helping you with the PD, being the caregiver, he probably has gotten familiar with where your blood pressure, where you're at, your levels. How has he been able to kind of, help you with that?
Oh, he's definitely supportive. Even pushes me.
Does he? Okay.
Yeah.
And with him being connected.
Yeah.
Really?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
That's not a bad thing. Sometimes it's good to have someone that pushes you, right?
Right. Yeah.
I've got a very easygoing personality, and with that's how kind of my marriage goes. Is my wife has she has a personality that kind of drives me and pushes me, and I think that's a good combination.
Yeah.
Opposites attract, and I certainly have got a beautiful wife that does that for me as well. So that's a good partnership when you have somebody doing that.
Yes.
Now, with your husband being a pastor, have any of his church members heard about you having kidney disease, and have they been prompted to try to get tested?
Oh, yes. And some of them said that they would, some of them are, too old, but a lot of them have definitely showed interest. Yeah.
What's interesting is too old is kind of interesting.
Ken shared something with us a little bit earlier, and I'm not sure if you heard that, but there is kind of a roller coaster ride that goes on, and it's unfortunate is that sometimes you have people that say they're going to get tested. They mean well, but then they don't follow through, or they do start getting tested and then they change your mind. How's that been for you?
Yeah, I've had even some previous church members get tested for me, or they were the wrong blood type, and then I had one that was actually a match, and then she had kidney stones herself, so they wouldn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then I have a sister that actually tried to do it and went through most of the testing, and then they found out her creatinine levels were also messed up. So just a lot.
Okay.
It has been a roller coaster.
Yeah,
Yes, it
definitely.
is.
Some
Well,
people
we're
have
having.
called in and talked to my coordinator, and then they say, well, you've got high blood pressure or diabetes yourself, so you can't, got to be healthy yourself in order to give a donor. Yeah.
Well,
Right.
it's interesting. I have
And
an
it's
identical
there
twin.
is a little, ups and downs going on when that happens. And we're having just a slight technical difficulty where I can't hear Ken. So I apologize, Ken, if at any point maybe I've talked over you. I apologize. I didn't hear you. But Ken, I think I'm getting a message that he's trying to talk. So Andrea, can you hear him?
Yes, I can.
Okay, I apologize. I couldn't hear him. I feel horrible now.
I figured he couldn't, but what I
I'm
was
going to
going to
go
say
ahead and
is,
let Ken talk because I couldn't hear him at all.
Okay.
well, I was, talking about people that, first of all, the age thing. My hospital said that age didn't
All right,
really
well, he's
matter.
talking. I'm going to let him talk and kind of converse with you for a moment, okay?
Okay.
Uh, um, I was, they said, like my mother asked, and she's 65, and they said it didn't matter how old she was, just as long as how healthy she was. I'm sure there is technically a cutoff, but and then I'm actually an identical twin myself, and my brother also has diabetes, so he would have been a perfect match, but
Right.
I couldn't get one from him, so that was kind of frustrating. But I'm sorry about the roller coaster ride you've been on, because
Right.
that's tough. I didn't have anyone get tested. No one I knew decided to get tested, so I didn't go through that particular roller coaster ride. But I'm sure, especially if someone's a match and then they find out they have kidney stones, that kind of
I
thing.
guess an O blood type is pretty hard, pretty rare. So it's been kind of hard to find O's, and then when you find an O, then they're like, oh yeah, but then something's always came up.
Well, and they have to make sure that the recipient is as perfect health as they can.
Right.
Obviously we have kidney disease, so we have stuff wrong with us, but they also have to make sure that the donor is extremely healthy. I was
Right.
lucky. My donor, managed a gym. She was in great shape,
Right.
that kind of thing. So I was blessed there, but it's definitely a roller coaster ride, as you said. And I can't imagine getting your hopes up, finding out that someone's a match, and then them being like, "Oh, by the way, they
Right.
can't donate." But
Right.
they, the hospitals, obviously, some hospitals are stricter about it than others. But the hospitals are trying to do what's best in interest of the person giving the kidney, in addition to the person receiving it. They want to make sure if you're going to donate life, like a kidney, that it's going to go to someone that will actually get the best benefit from it. Unfortunately, that's hard to say, because I know, even when I was at my sickest, I wanted one, that kind of thing. but
Right.
but the hospital has to, my hospital said they have a tendency to do higher risk cases than other places. So it's in Charleston, South Carolina, but people from Georgia and Florida come all the time because they get denied by their hospitals, and so they try to get in at this one because they're more willing to do more high risk cases.
Right. Yeah, mine.
So,
St. John says they prefer them to be in between 21 and 64 is the age gap.
well, that's interesting. I knew some places had, stricter guidelines, and I'm sure my hospital technically has a limit, but they say it's because they say it's your health, not your age. But I'm sure if an 80-year-old came in there, they'd be like, "There's no way they could pass the health guidelines," that kind of thing.
Right.
But my mother, I mean, she was 65, but she exercises more than I ever have in my entire life every day. Like, she doesn't
Wow.
miss. She doesn't miss. If you looked at her, you wouldn't say she's in great shape, but she can run rings around. Like, I'm 25 years younger than her, and she can run rings around me. It's not even close, that kind of thing. So,
That's awesome.
That is one thing with the kidney disease that I didn't realize how weak, or how even just walking on a treadmill
oh
and
yeah,
riding bikes and stuff, like, you don't realize how how well it does damage. You do go a lot slower and than
Well,
you used to.
I'm in the process of trying to regain muscle strength. I try to
Right.
explain to people that I laid in bed for 4 years.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I
Yeah.
mean, I'm having trouble lifting 10-pound dumbbells, and I'm
Yeah.
230 pounds, 6 foot tall. Like I shouldn't have trouble lifting those.
Right.
Walking a mile on the treadmill.
Right.
Luckily I had
Interesting.
started that about a month before I got the call about my transplant. So when I went into the transplant appointment, because they have you do some physical things. Like they didn't have me walk a mile, but they asked me if I could. I was like, yeah, I can do it in this
Yeah.
exact time. And they're like, really? I'm like, yeah, I did it today before I came here. Or the most random thing they had me do was sit and stand as many times as I could in like a minute. And they
Right.
counted, and I was like, that's odd. And they're like, well, I was like, that's pretty easy to do, isn't it? And they're like, you'd be surprised. I'm like, all right,
Right.
What what kind of benefit? Why did they, what did they say that would do for you, physically or mentally?
I think they were just trying to just see where I was at physically, like
Okay.
because the better shape I'm in, the better I'm going to recover from the transplant. And like as I said, I started exercising and stuff as much as I could about a month before the transplant, a month before I knew the transplant was coming. It wasn't a month before.
Yeah.
It was like God was preparing me to get ready for this
Right.
transplant. And I'll tell you this, I bounced back really quick from the surgery. Like they say you can't drive for 6 weeks, but I only took the pain medicine for 4 days after I got out of the hospital because I didn't need it. I wasn't in pain. I had walked like they told me to. I had done everything they told me to, and I know other people do everything the doctors say, and they don't have as great of, I guess, blessing as I did with mine. And again, I'm far from out of the woods, but one advice I could give you is do as much physical activity as you possibly can. Don't kill yourself. Don't push yourself harder than you need to. But I
Right.
can tell you this for a fact: the more you do before the transplant, the better you're going to be after the transplant. And it's easier said than done. Believe me.
Right.
I've been on peritoneal dialysis. I know that it's a lot less intrusive than hemodialysis. You feel better after peritoneal than you do at hemo. But I'll tell you
Right.
this: it's no cup of tea. Like
Right.
hemo technically cleans the blood better, so theoretically you should feel better. I'll tell you this: I didn't feel better. I mean,
And
I finally
you
felt
did
good
both.
maybe by the end of the in between day, and then I had to go back in the next morning, that kind of thing.
Uh-huh.
So
Well,
just do as much as you can.
that's like my surgeon asked me if I could, run up the stairs with one bag of groceries in my hand. And I said, well, sure. And he said, what about two bags? And I said, well, I'd try. And he said, what if I threw your kids all at you? I was like, oh, I don't know. Same thing. He's just trying
Yeah,
to prepare you to see
yeah,
how mentally
Okay.
and physically
yeah,
you
yeah.
can. Yeah.
Well, and the other random test they had me do was I was sitting in a chair and the door was probably, I don't know, 7 or 8 feet away. And they had me get up and walk to the door, touch the doorknob, and come back and sit down. I was like,
I've done that. Yep.
well, and
You've done that too?
I
Yep.
thought it was ridiculous. I even said to the doctor, like, why are you
I
having me do
asked
this?
if they were seeing how
Yeah.
slow or how fast I'm going. Yeah.
Well, and
Like, am I
she
supposed
looked
to
at me
be
and
running?
she's like, I know I sound crazy, but could you do this for me? And then when I got done, she's like, yet again, there are people that come in here that can't do that.
Right. Yeah.
Like the in my case, my donor wanted to donate to someone else, and that person got sick, and the hospital just made a rule. All we need her to be able to do to get back on the list is to walk one flight of stairs. Like they don't have to carry anything, they don't have to do anything, just walk one flight of stairs. And it
Right.
just so happens the person was never able to do it.
Right.
And so and thinking of me, I'm like one flight of stairs isn't that bad, but I have to remind myself that I wasn't. I mean, technically, I was in bad shape, but I wasn't
Yeah.
physically as bad as other people that are dealing with what we
Right.
were dealing with.
Right.
I was blessed that the gastroparesis was the worst part than the actual kidney disease. Don't get me wrong, kidney
Right.
disease wasn't easy, but
Right.
we are warriors. I mean, the stuff we put through, and what people don't realize is when you have kidney disease, that's only one thing that's wrong with you. Usually, it's causing other things.
Right.
My
Mhm.
gastroparesis got a little bit better after I got the transplant because the sickness in my stomach isn't quite as bad because kidney disease causes sickness in your stomach.
Right.
That gross taste in your mouth that you have when you have stage 5.
Right.
I don't have that anymore. That kind of thing. Your energy level. I mean, I tell people I feel better than I have in 10 years, because you don't realize, someone asked me, like, are there any days where you feel normal? I was like, I don't know what normal is. Like, I don't remember, and so when I started feeling better, I'm like, oh, so that's what normal is.
Yeah.
When you hadn't
It's a whole
experienced it
new
in 10
normal,
years.
right?
Yeah. When you haven't experienced normal in 10 years, you don't, you don't remember.
Right.
So, Andrea, you've got a pastor, you've got 7 kids. Your pastor is your husband is your pastor, and you've got a tight knit family. You've got people that hold you strong. You've got a great, sure foundation. So, I think there's so much that other kidney warriors that are listening to you tonight that can learn from you. And it's been a pleasure having you. What what I'd like to do, is give you hope, because you're giving people hope tonight just by listening to you, because it's very brave to be a kidney warrior. Ken knows himself, because he's been through a lot of what you're going through, because wow, you've got a lot in common. It's crazy. It's awesome that you're on the show together, because you have so much in common.
Right.
But what I want to emphasize is I want to give you hope. You deserve hope.
Right.
Just like he said, you're kidney warriors. You're fighting for your life.
Right.
Dialysis is your life support. And
Right.
you need to have hope. You've got your faith, and that's great. And I'm glad that you do, because faith will keep you strong. Your family will keep you strong. But tonight, I want to give you hope. I want to give you hope so that you feel as if you're not alone, because you're not. Other people are going through what you're going through. There are other people that will hear your story. I want all kidney warriors that are listening to give you support. I want people to give you love. I want people to understand that you need to find a living kidney donor. So that's what I want to do. I want to give you hope, just like Kenneth said, okay, that this is not your end point. Okay, this isn't Avengers Endgame. This isn't the end game for you. I don't even know if you've seen the movie yet, but this isn't the end game. All right, I want to give you hope, because I know, because of my faith, okay, you and I share faith, and I do have so much faith, and I have so much passion for kidney disease awareness, that I know, okay, with everything in me, that you're going to have some success. I know it. Okay, I feel it, and I know it. I have faith in that. So this is a warrior's call, okay? All kidney warriors need to come together to help you. So everybody that's listening, okay, please share this in the Facebook groups, okay? Share it to Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, share it with your next door neighbor, okay? Click on the share button. Let's not be shy. Let's click on that share button, because we need to get the word out for this kidney warrior. So speaking of which, okay, because we want the information out there, and my emphasis is to give you hope, let's have you share, okay, your donor blood type. Let's have you share with us your hospital again, and any transplant coordinator or transplant hospital contact information, okay?
Okay. I'm definitely an O blood type. Lisa Lawson is my coordinator at St. John's Medical Center. And you can also go to livingdonor.sjmc and go online there and fill out an application, and somebody would contact you back.
Awesome. And does your hospital also, do they also accept like the paired exchange program?
Yes, they do.
Very nice. Mm-hmm. All right, you heard that, folks. So even if you're not, okay, blood type O, a negative or positive, it doesn't matter. then even if you're not the right blood type, they do the paired exchange program. So in my eyes, anybody, okay, can start this. So please, okay, let's let love move the needle tonight, all right? Let's have people feel the love, okay? The love that I have, the love that everybody should have for a kidney warrior like yourself. And if you feel moved, and if love does move the needle, please let the love move the needle for Andrea so that she has a renewed hope, so that we can have her find a kidney donor, have a rich, full life with her 7 kids and with her husband.
Yes.
This is what I want to do. I want to lift you up and give you the hope that you need to have, okay? Because you're not alone. I don't want you to feel that way anymore, because there is a God that listens to you.
Yes. Yes. Definitely.
Please give her a miracle. She deserves
Absolutely.
it. She deserves it.
Absolutely. She needs a miracle. And there's a lot that goes on with a miracle. And one of the things that I strongly believe in is prayer. And prayer is great, okay? Because prayer does so many powerful things. But the thing about prayer is that God wants us to use our faith when we pray. And when we have faith, we have to also do something, right?
Yes.
Because if we're not,
Yeah, he doesn't want us to be passive. Like
not at all.
It's an interactive relationship. It definitely is.
Absolutely. I totally wholeheartedly agree with you. Is that, too many times I hear I'm praying for you, and I want people to pray for you. Okay, I don't want this misconstrued. Prayer is absolutely a very powerful tool, and I do it daily. I do it even when I'm in my car driving to work and I'm thinking about it. Okay, not all, we don't always have to be on our knees praying. But what I also want is I want all the kidney warriors not only to pray for you, but I want to see something. I want to see action that's involved with the prayer. We need to be doing something to show we need to show God that we have faith.
Right.
Okay, thinking about him and believing in him is great, but we need to have something going. We need to have movement. And this is what I want to start I want to start a movement that we get this going in such a positive direction that there is something behind this instead of just I'm praying for you.
Right.
I want to pray for you, and I'll pray for you tonight, and I'll continue to pray for you. But I'm also going to share, all right? And that's what I'd like to ask everybody is please share, because clicking on the share button is more valuable sometimes than currency for Andrea.
Right.
You never know, okay? God only knows the person that that may be connected to that clicking on the share. All right.
Right.
You never quite know. All right. For Ken, it was a miracle, and I believe in miracles. His story. Thank you, Ken, for sharing your message. Holy cow. An altruistic donor who didn't even know you.
They're out there. Andrea, I just want to give you the news. They're out there. They're out there. And I started Kidney Page to try to find a donor for me, and I'm in the process. I was trying to come up with a new name for it, because right now it's Kidney for Kenny, and I don't need a kidney right now, but I want to use it as an advocacy page for people. And so a friend of mine that's actually a songwriter, I was like, hey, can you come up with something? And I think he's come up with something. So I'm going to be changing it, and I'll definitely share your information on there. And I don't have a huge reach yet, but I'm working on it. And I figure if I can get one person I know to share it, then I've helped in any way I can, that kind of thing. So I definitely wish you a lot of luck, and I know that this process is a way more than luck, but that's just kind of one of those cliche things we say. But keep just anyone you can tell your story to. You never know how they're going to, you never know how it's going to happen.
Right. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the show, Andre. I know that, getting in front of the camera isn't always easy, and telling your story sometimes isn't easy either,
Right.
because, you know, it's a brave thing.
Right.
It is. It's not easy being vulnerable. It's not easy. It's not, and so
It's
thank you.
yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure. Again, I feel it's imperative and it's so very important to get your message out there. Every story needs to be heard, and yours is no less valuable. Your story is extremely valuable. It's
Right.
so important that we get your story out there, that your voice is heard, and that we do everything. I do. I feel that it's extremely important for me to help everybody that I can, and everybody that I'm connected to, that I can get connected to. I feel it's my responsibility to do everything in my power to promote your message, and that's what I do, and that's what I want to do for you.
Right.
Okay, I absolutely want you to smile and believe that there is hope, and I want you to continue to have hope so that you don't lose it. And if you
Right.
do, okay, feel free to lean on me, send me a message, and then anybody who's listening, please
Right.
continue to give her support so that
Right.
if she is having a down day, we can lift her back up. Because I absolutely want you to have success. I do.
Right. Right. Well, thank you.
You're very welcome. God bless you and your family.
Yes.
Nothing but love and good vibrations I'm sending your way, and I'll continue to promote this, and I'll continue to share this message for you. And if and I'll be happy to make a couple other posters for you like I did just previously, and I'll be happy to make a video for you as well. All right.
All right. Sounds good.
Well, Ken, I appreciate you coming on too. Your story is incredible. Before I end the show, is there something maybe, Ken, that you'd like to say, that maybe share your message briefly with other people?
I want to go back to just not losing faith. It's so easy because you get depressed, you get down, you don't you feel like your life's on hold. Unlike you guys, I'm not married, and so I was like, I'd like to get married, but it's hard to get married when you're sick all the time. It's hard to the dating scene isn't great for someone that has to go to dialysis 3 days a week, that kind of thing, and so you just have to keep faith, even when it gets its worst. You have to keep faith, and keep people around you that keep you keep you in the faith. Don't some people don't get what we have. They don't. It doesn't matter how many times you tell them. As we talked about earlier, I didn't get what I had. So I can't really expect them to unless they're living through it. But like some of my family were like, well, he doesn't look as sick as he says he is, that kind of thing. And it's hard to explain to them that, I'm putting on a brave face, and you should see me, the other times when I'm not around you, so just keep the faith. Cause I'm a living example of, it can happen when you least expect it. It can happen from someone you least expect it. Yet again, I was sitting at home in between dialysis. I think it was a Thursday, and I was just sitting there. And next thing you know, I get a call saying, "Hey, can you do a transplant on the 13th of February?"
Just
I'm
like that.
just like that, out of nowhere. I won the lottery, and the odds of winning the lottery is small, but people still win it all the time.
Right.
So why can't it be you?
Right.
Very powerful, Ken. Wow. Thank you.
No, my pleasure. It was great talking with both of you, and Andrea, I wish you all the luck in the world. And if I can ever do anything for you, let me know. I'll do anything in my power.
Thank you.
Oh, my
Thank
pleasure.
you. It's been a pleasure, Ken. Thank you.
Right.
Hope to continue to have a correspondence with you. Absolutely.
Certainly. Yes, sir.
All right. God bless.
Right. Yes, you too. Have a great night.
Thank you. You as well.
All right.
Well, thank you everybody for listening tonight. We've had a great glimpse at a couple of really strong journeys. Man, Ken's Ken's story is absolutely incredible. It's amazing to hear how this total stranger was connected to become a living kidney donor for him. And then we've got to know Andrea a little bit more. She has 7 kids, everybody. She's got a strong family where they're all of her children are adopted. She has incredible love for people, for her to become, the person she is right now. We need to step up and help her. Please, it's a warrior's call, everybody. Everybody united. Let's come together and let's step it up to share this message. Click the share button and let's promote this tonight. This message, this live broadcast, this show is for people just like Ken and Andrea. And let's get her message out there so that we can help her find that living kidney donor. Thanks for everybody. Thank you for listening. God bless. Have a good week.